The night is quiet. Shadows twist on the walls of a modest suburban home where secrets whisper beneath the surface. This is not a tale of ordinary domesticity, but rather the unraveling of a mystery contained within a leather-bound notebook known simply as the House Rules. For years, a young soul believed that a new start, her mother's remarriage, would finally herald an era of stability and warmth. But as dusk settles over the home, a chill creeps in, and every creak of the floorboards beckons a terror far beyond routine discipline. When the mother's new partner, David, first stepped through the doorway, there was an aura of confident charm. His broad smile and assertive manner had promised a promise of maturity and order that so many step-families attempt to forge. Yet the subtle glint in his eyes hinted at something deeper, something darker. In his hands, he carried more than just his suitcase. He bore a secret ledger, a leather-bound notebook meticulously crafted with worn edges and cryptic inscriptions. Its title, etched in calligraphy on the cover, read, "The House Rules." At first, the rules seemed like a strict code intended to shape proper parenting. It began with what might have been routine, such as no phones after 8 p.m. and keep the hallway lights on. These rules were pronounced with a gentle firmness during family dinners, as if to instill in everyone a sense of disciplined order. But soon, as the days slipped by, an unsettling truth began to seep from the cracks of those rules. In the soft whisper of night, when a cold draft passed through narrow corridors, and the dim glow of the hallway lights fought against creeping darkness, one particular rule resonated as more than a mere household policy. Never look him in the eye during dinner. The command was not issued as a suggestion, but as a solemn decree. No one questioned its necessity, and indeed, each family member gradually accepted the rule, with a timid compliance carved by a silent dread. As time wore on, another cryptic rule began to emerge with frightening clarity. If you hear scratching behind the basement door, do not knock back. This directive was never explained, only handed over in a manner that left everyone to wonder what lurked beyond that ancient wooden door. The very sound of scratching sent shivers down spines and resulted in anxious glances exchanged over cluttered kitchen tables. Underneath David's perfect exterior, laced with rules and regulations, hid a purpose that was clearer with every forbidden rule. One rainy evening, as the monotonous drizzle tapped against the window panes, the family gathered for dinner. The dinner table was arranged with care, a silent tribute to David's insistence on routine and order. The family's eyes remained averted, each participant silently avoiding direct contact with the man who founded these bizarre regulations. The clink of cutlery and hushed whispers filled the space between chunks of roasted meat and mounds of mashed potatoes. The spectral atmosphere was so potent that even the aroma of the stew carried an undertone of somber disquiet. In the quiet consumption of food, a young daughter, eyes wide with unspoken curiosity, found herself frozen by the thought that nothing in the notebook had any mundane explanation. In the recesses of her memory, fragments of whispered conversations pieced together an unsettling mosaic. She remembered a day when she, alone in her room with a flickering flashlight, had dared to peek at the notebook resting on David's desk. The secrets scribed in flowing cursive lines were as bewitching as they were foreboding. Her heart pounded as she realized that these were not simple household guidelines. They were warnings, protective spells to keep something unseen at bay. Each rule, she realized, had a dual purpose. On the surface, they maintained order and discipline. Beneath that veneer, they resonated like guardian incantations, rituals designed to ward off an unspeakable presence. "Keep the hallway lights on," the notebook admonished. It was a command to repel shadows that crept closer with each passing minute of darkness. And no phones after 8 p.m. was not merely about unplugging from the modern world. It served as a boundary to prevent communications that could awaken a sleeping terror from the realms outside our understanding. The household slowly became a character in its own right. Each hallway, every cold draft, and each creaking floorboard, participating in a silent symphony of foreboding tension. The mother, oblivious to the full implications of the rules, tried to nurture a sense of normalcy, cooking meals and offering reassurances during hushed bedtime stories. Yet even she could not completely shake the feeling that David's rules were an invitation to an unspoken menace waiting to be discovered. One fateful night, after a day marred by inexplicable phenomena, a bird tapping incessantly at the window, a mirror that seemed to hold a strange glimmer, and the eerie echo of footsteps when no one was there, the scratching behind the basement door grew louder. The sound was a relentless tap, a staccato rhythm that punctuated the increasingly ominous silence. In the dim light, a chill slithered up spines, and minds echoed that singular command, "Do not knock back." In that charged atmosphere, curiosity warred with dread. The young daughter, having learned that her inquisitiveness might invite terrible consequences, listened to the sound with bated breath. The scratching was persistent, almost pleading in its insistence. But just as her hand hovered near the basement door, she remembered David's stern decree and withdrew a decision that left her with aching regret and unanswered questions. What could have been beyond that door? Was it a creature or a manifestation of something beyond mortal comprehension? The answer remained locked within the pages of the house rules, as immutable and foreboding as the ink that filled them. Day by day, the rules continued to shape the atmosphere of the household. Each established rule was methodically reinforced, accompanied by David's steady gaze and an intensity that rarely allowed for questioning or dissent. His voice, as measured as a metronome, delivered lessons in obedience without empathy or explanation. Even mundane acts, like clearing the dining table or turning off the lights at bedtime, took on an almost ritualistic quality. There was an unspoken understanding among them that these rules were their shield, a necessary boundary between the familiar world and unspeakable horrors lurking in the peripheral darkness. Outside the creaking hallways and echoing vacuums of silence, the town continued its daily life, a place where children played in sunlit streets and neighbors exchanged banal greetings over picket fences. But within the walls of this seemingly ordinary home, an ancient specter of dread reigned. The rules were a reminder that even the most unpretentious settings can cradle extraordinary terrors. They served not just as a strict regimen, but as successive layers of a protective ward, keeping at bay the malignant force that David believed would otherwise invade their fragile sanctuary. It was on a chilly autumn evening when the true nature of the house rules began to reveal itself in ways that defied common logic. A heavy fog had descended upon the neighborhood, and a strange, unearthly fog enveloped the house like a living shroud. In the silence of midnight, when the world was cloaked in darkness, and the soft hum of the electrical lines was the only sound, a distant knock echoed through the quiet corridors. The young daughter, awakened abruptly, strained her ears against the overwhelming silence. Was it the sound of footsteps, or perhaps something dragging along the floor? In the darkness, every noise became monstrous, amplified by the fear that had taken root in her heart. The knock was subtle yet insistent, as if it were a prelude to an intrusion of the abnormal. Unable to resist the magnetic pull of the unknown, she crept out of her room. Her bare feet made no sound on the old wooden floors as she made her way towards a door at the end of a narrow corridor. There the basement door loomed ominously, its presence both an invitation and a warning. Behind it, she could almost sense a presence, something ancient and waiting. Her hand trembled, recalling that stern admonition, "If you hear scratching behind the basement door, do not knock back." The command resounded like an incantation in her mind, and with a great effort of will, she retreated, her heart pounding like a frantic drum in the midnight silence. The following morning, after a night that had passed in anxious vigilance, David calmly reiterated the rules over breakfast with the same measured tone that suggested he carried the weight of his own secrets. He instructed them on every permissible activity, as though he were reciting a litany against an invisible enemy. The rules, inscribed in that leather-bound notebook, had become the axis on which their fragile existence turned. They were both a sanctuary and a prison, a relentless reminder that their safety hinged upon a strict compliance to some otherworldly covenant. It was during a quiet afternoon, when the golden sunlight filtered through lace curtains and spilled gently onto hardwood floors, that the daughter resolved to understand more. The soft hum of the sewing machine in the corner of the living room did little to mask the dangerous curiosity that grew within her. With cautious resolve, she began to piece together the clues scattered throughout the house. She found remnants of whispered warnings in her mother's half-forgotten memories, hints of a past long buried. A conversation overheard between adult visitors suggested that David had once encountered something unspeakable, something that necessitated the creation of these very rules. Their words, though muted and cautious, painted a picture of a man haunted by a personal nightmare, a darkness he never fully disclosed. As the investigation continued covertly in her own mind, the daughter scribbled down observations in a small notebook of her own, a silent counterpoint to David's domineering ledger. Her little notes, written in desperate scrawls, attempted to document not only the tangible rules, but also the atmospheric terror that pervaded every room. She began to understand that the rules were less about controlling behavior and more about controlling fate. It was as if David had constructed an elaborate ritual, one that required the strict adherence of every unwitting participant to hold back forces from another realm. The household became an arena where each family member played a critical role in the unfolding drama. Even the mother, who viewed the house as a safe haven, began to sense that a door had been opened, a portal to something menacing that fed on the ordinary and transformed it into the extraordinary. In the hush of the night, when even the light from the hallway barely pushed back the darkness, every creak, every whisper of sound carried the promise of an encounter with something malevolent. The rules, once thought to be mere sacraments for family order, had revealed themselves to be potent safeguards against an uninvited presence whose appetite for chaos threatened to tear their world apart. Yet, amidst the terror, there was an unexpected element of reluctant hope, a belief that if they could adhere to these strictures, if they could remain united in their silent pact of obedience, then they might just survive the night. It was a testament to the human spirit, a fragile determination illuminated by candlelight in the deepest shadows. At the dinner table, every glance avoided and every rule followed became a prayer spoken without words, an unspoken plea for protection. The family clung to the possibility that their disciplined routine was not an oppressive scheme, but a lifeline thrown from a past filled with unspoken horrors. The notebook lay open on David's desk, its pages filled with a script that few dared to decipher. Each written rule was a fragment of a larger incantation, a code crafted through personal sacrifice and hard-won experience. David, with his measured gaze and quiet authority, seemed to embody both the mentor and the warden, a man whose own survival had depended on mastering the delicate balance between order and chaos. His eyes, forever watching, carried within them the burden of countless nights spent battling against forces that lurked just beyond the threshold of mortal understanding. In the final analysis, the house rules were a paradox, a combination of benevolence and terror. They were a means of survival woven into the fabric of everyday existence, a blend of precaution and mysticism that allowed the family to sleep, albeit with one eye open. And so, as the nights grew longer and the scratching at the basement door persisted, the family's every action became a deliberate, almost ritualistic dance, turning on the lights at dusk, keeping their voices hushed after dark, and most importantly, never daring to defy the inviolable decrees inscribed in that ominous book. In the recovery of daylight, when the nightmares of the night retreated to the corners of dreams and the normal routines of school and work resumed, the presence of the rules remained etched in their minds. For them, each day was a reminder: obey the rules, and you might just survive the night. With every whispered secret passed down, every unspoken bond shared in the stillness of an everyday home, the human heart learned that survival sometimes demanded the surrender to practices that defied ordinary explanation, a surrender to a mystique that guarded against an extraordinary peril. As the seasons changed and time wove its relentless passage through the corridors of the home, the daughter carried with her the hidden knowledge gleaned from late-night investigations and hushed conversations. The rules had shaped her understanding of what it meant to live in the shadow of an unseen threat, where every rule was a testament to the balance between fear and the hope of safety. And even as she grew, as the clarity of youth gave way to the somber insight of adulthood, the memory of that leather-bound notebook, its pages heavy with unutterable warnings, lingered as a symbol of the fragile boundary between the known and the unknown. In a way, the story of the stepfather's rules became a living fable, an account passed on in subtle hints and reflective silences. It resonated with anyone who had ever felt the chill of an inexplicable presence or the weight of an unspoken command. For in the end, the home was not merely a place of shelter. It was also a battleground where the forces of the ordinary collided with those of the uncanny. And as long as the rules remained inscribed in that weathered notebook, a silent promise lingered in the air that there was a method, however obscure, to keeping the dark at bay. Thus, as you listen to this unfolding narrative, allow the cadence of the words to carry you into the heart of the mystery, a mystery woven through the fabric of everyday life, lit by the glow of the hallway lights, and shadowed by the unyielding watch of a man who knew too much about the other side. Within every hushed command and every trembling obedience lies an invitation, a call to watch, to listen, and to understand that the price for safety in a world as mysterious as this might just be the price of our own silent surrender. Remember, in a house governed by such unfathomable rules, every midnight whisper's been a rehearsal for survival, and every caution uttered is a safeguard, a small defiance against the unknown. In this delicate balance between fear and discipline, the family learns that truth sometimes lies hidden behind rules that seem mad at first glance. Yet, it is precisely in this adherence to the mysterious edicts that they hold the key to continuing their fragile existence amidst the encroaching darkness. So the question remains suspended in the stillness of that haunted home. Will the rules carved so carefully through personal trials and spectral encounters be enough to keep the unseen menace at bay? And as you ponder this, let the steady, measured heartbeat of each whispered command remind you that certain mysteries, no matter how chilling, are woven into the tapestry of our everyday lives, urging us to trust that sometimes survival is found in the adherence to rules that carry more mystery than explanation.